would hit it.
Yeah.
That's what caused
Smack
it.
it. When I saw that when I was a kid, when I realized that was where they got the sound, I immediately ran out the back door of my house, went two houses down.
Did you say two whores down?
Whoa! Make a left at the third whore.
2 houses down in the backyard there was power lines that ran through the neighborhood. And
That explains a lot.
There was a guideline, and I was out there just banging away on that dude, trying to replicate the sound. Doesn't quite sound the same when you're a kid. But
Yeah.
The pulse rifles from Aliens.
Yeah, I maybe.
Very distinctive sound.
I tell you what, after that movie came out, I spent a lot of time doodling those guns.
Oh, yeah.
With the grenade
The
launcher.
distinctive sound of the AK-47 of your...
What?
It's a Clint Eastwood joke.
No, what I think was most impressive about those guns was having a flamethrower attached to them.
See, yeah, but she didn't really attach it to. She taped it together. That was the whole thing. It wasn't on there.
It just took it to another level.
Yeah.
No, Aliens, it's the gyro-mounted heavy machine gun. That's the most iconic weapon in that movie.
In Aliens?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let's rock.
Yes. But in games, like Sean said, the monofilament whip. I mean, things like that make...
Scream Shadowrun.
It screams Shadowrun to me.
I've never been a fan.
Love it.
They're just too hard to use.
I just think it's cheap.
It's actually hurt my character more than he's hurt other people with it.
So why use one then?
But it's so cool.
Johnny Mnemonic, man.
Yeah.
Johnny Mnemonic.
That's the only part of Johnny Mnemonic that I think was really awesome.
I love that.
It was that you actually got to see what a monofilament whip could do.
Yeah.
I thought the Bowie knife and the crucifix was kind of cool.
When he pulls that out of his
Do you want him to
fingernail-
be brought to God or to you? In games, other than the monofilament whip, our standard whip can be very valuable. Remember Deuce's character that used the whip?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Used it at range. It was an at-range trip attack.
Yeah. Wasn't that it's a D2 weapon?
Yeah, if that, I thought it just did 1 point of damage.
I think it's D2.
I
I'm
mean,
not
it is
certain.
D2. It's not a lot of damage.
Wow, that person whoever come up with that skill never been hit by one.
Them bad boys are hurt. Yeah, it doesn't do a lot of damage per se, but it does hurt like a bastard.
Oh, you'll want to run away when you get hit.
Maybe there ought to be a stunning effect.
Right.
For me, the Shadowrun isn't Shadowrun unless there's some kind of machine pistol involved.
Yeah, the Ares Predator, man.
Yeah.
Panther assault cannon
No.
The Ares Predator's kind of the thing.
and grenades.
No.
Our games were dominated by, the machine pistols.
Yeah.
The burst fire
Burst fire pistol, yeah.
with all the...
Which reminds me of RoboCop. RoboCop, I think, was the first time I ever really saw
Oh,
a
yeah.
machine,
Yeah.
Like a multi-fire pistol.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
the
thought,
automatic
oh my God, that is
pistol.
awesome.
Yeah.
I read an article about that prop. It was a Beretta 92 variant, the machine pistol variant of the Beretta 92 with extra shit upon it. But yeah, that's exactly what I picture when I picture
Automatic
the Ares
pistols
Predator.
are pretty deadly.
Yeah.
They're not accurate at all, but boy, when you spray and pray, it's awesome.
My thighs are big enough. I could probably keep a gun in there.
Well, that's cool about
Yes.
the monofilament whip. It's in
A
your
hollow
fingernail.
leg.
You know, you just whip that fingernail out.
No, I don't think that's how it is in Shadowrun, though, is it?
You can.
You can. It's
Is that how
I
it
had
is?
it.
You can have a fingertip compartment.
Yep.
Is that how the guy did it on Johnny Mnemonic, too?
Well, it was his thumb.
It was
Yeah.
just. It was actually.
and
he had
to
like a
pull
coke
it.
nail.
Yeah, to pull it.
Right.
Pull the coke nail.
But if you noticed, it was actually like this chrome, like a thimble type thing. It fit over his thumb. It was like,
I think that was just a bad prosthetic.
well, maybe, but then.
thimble. Yeah,
Well, I'm just saying
that's
it just slipped onto his finger.
I got a killer thimble, baby.
But that's cool. He pulls it out and like it just kind of doesn't extend it all the way out at first, and he pulls it out just shortly, and he makes like a loop through the door, and he cuts the lock off. That was awesome.
Yeah, to a Udo Kier's head that way.
Yeah, awesome weapon.
We had a game of Shadowrun where they cut through the floor or
Yes.
through the ceiling of
Of a hospital.
It was in a hospital room to get to the patient on the other side.
That was
Using monofilament whip?
Cut through. Yeah, used the monofilament whip. Cut through the size. Just bigger than the size of the bed, and then had a
It was a hydraulic lift.
hydraulic lift underneath to lower it down so he didn't crash down and hurt the patient because they were extracting a patient from a hospital.
Yeah. You were
Yeah.
on that mission, dude.
He doesn't remember.
No, I do remember that.
Oh, you do?
No, we
But
don't.
knowing what we know now about hospitals, that probably would have started a fire, wouldn't it?
May have.
Oxygen lines running through the floor.
Well, yeah.
Detail.
It was an old hospital.
Nah.
Oh, well, we've blown up airports in Shadowrun before, so.
Yeah.
And that's kind of something else I wanted to talk about is heavy weapons. Heavy weapons, ordnance. Only in futuristic games or maybe a war game do you use something like that.
Yeah.
Grenades.
Grenades.
Hate them. Don't use them.
Love them. Awesome.
Well, especially when in Shadowrun
Dynamite?
we would use confined space rule,
Right.
where the energy of the explosion would bounce back at you, and you would end up taking like twice as much damage
Right.
from a grenade if it blew up in a confined space,
Yeah.
like a
Which it did a
stairwell.
lot as soon as we started using that rule.
Also, the time that we were in the water using torpedoes,
Oh, exploding torpedoes.
and someone decided,
Hydrostatic shock.
Someone decided to use the hydrostatic shock.
That was me.
rule, I guess.
I'll cop to that one. It was me.
Yeah, but they were already torpedoes, so I think it was supposed to be assumed that was what the damage already was.
Yeah.
So we made it a lot worse and blew up our target, or the person we were trying to
Do you
extract.
think that we as gamers know way too much about this stuff?
I think as far as games are concerned, yes. If we were to go and try to talk weapons with,
SEALs?
SEALs or
Well, yes. Okay, yes. I'm not talking about. I mean, that goes with anything. If you're talking to experts, chances are you don't know as much as you think you are.
Yeah, but in
Or
a
think you
game
do.
like Shadowrun, where there is weapons in there that are similar to real weapons.
Oh, yeah.
And then you'll look at the ranges and stuff on there and be like, okay, I know for a fact that rifle cannot shoot that far.
Yeah.
Right.
Accurately.
Sometimes we incorporate too much, maybe real world physics into our games and things like that, where then we're like, the hydrostatic shock rule. That's like the prime example of that. Oh, well, by hydrostatic shock, you should be doing way more damage than this, because, you're only getting this much damage applied to a weapon. And well, that's the same as this other weapon, and that's crap.
Wasn't that the same problem we were having with the pepper box? 'Cause we were saying, well, I know what a pepper box can do, and that on the book is way off. And
Right. And so then we started to use kind of like
Our own logic.
Yeah. And rather
then
than
it was
just
wrong.
going
the
with
book was wrong.
exactly, rather than going with what the book says, our egos wouldn't allow us to do that.
We assumed that these people hadn't done their research.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And
They hadn't.
I just think you should play the game as it was intended, rather than try and rewrite the rules for I think a katana should do this. It shouldn't do the same amount of damage as this. You're injecting too much into the game.
Just using the stats from the book and not trying to insert our own realtor expertise into the weapons is probably going to cut down on arguments for sure.
Right. You just use the rules as they're written.
Right.
Or suspend your disbelief. And that's something else that's really hard to do. You have to suspend your disbelief. There's no way in hell that you could have a 3-bladed longsword that shoots 2 blades.
No.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a great movie.
I did see in a museum somewhere. They were talking. There's some legend from the Middle East. There's a god or a demon or something that has a 3-bladed scimitar. Now in the museum they had a 2-bladed scimitar. It was shuffled away in some archive somewhere, and I saw it. It was there. They were joined at the bottom, and it was essentially just 2 scimitars on a handle.
Yeah. Impractical as hell.
Yeah,
But
totally.
Well, not
Looks
necessarily,
cool, but looks cool.
I mean, that's 2 cuts every time you swipe.
Yeah, but it's also 2 blades that you have to try and using your own strength to penetrate.
Right. It's easier to push 1 blade through something than 2 blades or 3 blades.
And see, there we go again.
Yes, the 2 expert sword fighters, Sean and Jason.
no, that's just
it's-
normal physics.
It's logical. It just 1 blade makes more sense.
But
than
here we
2.
go again. We're applying logic to a fantasy game.
It's like Wolverine. Why doesn't he just use 1 blade? Why's he got to use all 3?
Talking about trying to apply physics and knowing too much about weapons, but that actually goes back to the beginning of the segment where you were saying when we were younger and we were marveling at all the weapons and pole arms we saw and pictures of in the books, and we knew nothing about weapons back then. So I think not knowing a lot about the stuff is actually makes things go smoother. And then once you grow up and you've been in the Army and actually use some of these weapons, then that really you can't go
separate
back.
yourself.
You can't unlearn that.
I probably never would have started fencing or doing martial arts if it had been for the weapons sections in old D&D books.
Yeah, I would agree with Mark. That's definitely true that the books in junior high inspired me to look those things up at the library, to research those things. That's the thing I love now about having an iPhone or similar device, that you can pull that stuff up and you can look at those things. I mean, we say longsword. Longsword is such a generic term.
Right.
There are so many different kinds of
Sure.
swords that would fit that bill.
Right. But another thing that I think we've gone away from is like drawing our weapons.
Yeah.
You know, not like drawing them from the sheath or whatever. I'm talking like actually with a pen or pencil. I mean, back in the day, we used to do that all the time.
Yeah.
You know, on our character sheet, we would draw, you know, this is my
Yes.
guy's sword, and this is what it looks like, and adding some creativity to your sword and giving it actually like almost like a personality.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Last time I did that was my Brewster's character, Carl, had a dagger. And I drew her dagger on the back of the sheet.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you got all these weapons that are actual weapons, but what about things that anything can be a weapon? Like in, you know, what's that movie with Vin Diesel? He says, I'm going to kill you with this cup, you know?
Oh,
well, that's a weapon at that point.
That was
Improvised weapon.
Yeah.
that was
Damn it.
Riddick.
Riddick, yeah.
Riddick, yeah.
Chronicles of Riddick.
Well, you could, yeah, and I think that's something that we haven't mentioned or haven't talked about before is the improvised weapon.
Yeah.
A game can get really fun when you use an improvised weapon.
Oh,
when you
yeah.
kill a guy with a red hot poker, that's pretty awesome. I killed a guy with a wood-bound book one time with one of my characters.
The very first roll for a hit and damage for 3rd edition, when we played 3rd edition, was by me playing my character Jameis, who used a beer mug in a bar to punch a guy.
Yeah. So yeah, using weird things for weaponry can be really fun. Just going to your weapon and stabbing somebody with your knife or with your sword,
Yeah.
or hitting them with your mace.
Or if you're a monk, you know, your fists.
Yeah, but that gets kind of old, kind of hit miss. But you start getting creative start beating people with weird things.
Yeah.
that
Plus,
could get pretty fun.
One of the things that always kind of bothered me about the game is like, I want to envision my character with, you know, his sword on his hip and his dagger over here and another sword on his back perhaps or whatever. And then you get down to the nuts and bolts of the game and it just comes down to, I'm going to use my sword, I'm going to use my sword, I'm going to use my sword.
Right.
And you never get the whole, like the Three Musketeers movies when they're fencing with the sword and they smash the guy with the cup and then they turn around and they belt this guy in the face with their hand.
Right.
Or they kick 3 guys down the staircase. You never really get that in
Well, you have
game,
to inject
you know?
it yourself.
Right? And you kind of do. But it was like, what when it comes down to the mechanic, though, it was like, why am I going to kick a guy and do strength plus D4 when I could stab him with my sword and at least get the D8 out of it? You know?
Yeah, you're supplementing or you're substituting game mechanics for creativity at that
Yes.
point. I mean, and Dan was a real good when we're talking about our Sea Princess campaign. His character did things like that, where he jumped up on a bar and kicked the dude's teeth out.
Right.
You know, and would do different things because he would envision his character as a certain way, and then he would do, you know, what
Right. I
what
think-
he
yeah,
thought.
I did the same thing with Pickles. He would just fight with whatever he
Right,
had on
whatever
hand.
the first thing that he grabbed.
Right.
Well, and I think that helps too, Mark, that you have a dungeon master or game master that's willing to play along with you,
Right.
and help make that happen.
Right, because there's just so many times that you can say, you know, well, I'm going to hit him with my sword, or hit him but if you go, hey, is there something at hand, you know, and to have a game master or a dungeon master go, there's a cup, or there's a bench, or there's a this, you know,
Wooden bowl full of peanut shells.
yeah, or whatever.
That actually got me thinking about superhero weapons. You know, something like Bullseye, who could pick up, you know, anything, a dice or
A peanut.
a peanut, and kill someone with it.
That was one thing I like about the Daredevil movie when Colin Farrell took out that old woman who wouldn't shut the fuck up. More peanuts, please.
There's nothing I liked about that movie.
I empathize with that so much. It was really pulling for Bullseye.
I was going to elaborate on Mark's fencing about using improvised weapons during a duel, let's say.
They don't let you do that in competitive sports.
Make it cool.
There's
Yeah.
the reason why you don't do that in games. There's a in-game reason, probably, and an out-of-game reason. In real life, let's say you have a sword, the other guy has a sword, so you're evenly matched. So the reason why the swashbuckler would be throwing things and using his cape is to gain an advantage because the swords are equaled out. In the games, it doesn't usually all work that way. You know, you're not really parry, you know, at a stalemate for the most part. You're, you know, usually because of the way games are made, you're going to be hitting half the time, let's say. So it hardly ever comes into mind to try to throw something in there to gain an advantage.
If we'd have not gotten drunk that night and played 7th Sea, that is worked into that system.
Ah, nice.
Well, and old school D&D, how long the rounds were longer than, you know, 6 seconds. It was like a minute or something like that. It was a lot longer of a time frame. And in the rules, it said it's assumed that you're dodging and you're parrying and things like that, and you're only rolling for your one good opening at that point.
Yeah.
and then you move on to the next round.
And then my other point is along the lines of the game mechanics. The only time, like you were saying, Dan, that you would want